What's up, friends? Before we hop into the show, got to tell you about Chevalier Mortgage. Virginia and Mike Chevalier are not only diehard Broncos fans and proud CSU alums, but they have supported DNVR for a long time as DNVR members. They are one of our family members. They're a husband and wife team with over 15 years of financial services experiences. Visit them at dnvrmortgage.com and enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat of your choice when you do so. And most importantly, get set up with a free consultation to discuss all of your options. That's dnvrmortgage.com. And since your home is likely to be one of your largest assets and your mortgage your largest debt, they believe it is vital to consider your full financial picture when purchasing a home. This includes considering your short-term and long-term planning goals, your investments, and your tax situation. Mike of Virginia will work tirelessly to find the best loan for your situation. Visit them at dnvrmortgage.com and enter to win a free DNVR shirt or hat when you do. And make sure to talk to them about refinancing as well. They look at your entire picture and will help you find the best option as well. So check them out at dnvrmortgage.com for a chance to win free DNVR shirt or hat. And most importantly, get set up with a free consultation to discuss all of your options. Michael Chevalier, MLS 1931006. Virginia Chevalier, NMLS 1910631.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. Two goes out to Zach Mace, RK, and the bar. Three for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number four, we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend bleed orange and blue to the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome into the DNVR Broncos podcast on this wonderful Wednesday. I'm your host, Zach Stevens, joined by my main man, Andrew Mason, and our super producer, Kale, back there. Thanks for all of you guys rolling with us today. And before we hop into the show, got to tell you guys about our presenting sponsor who also rolls with us, MSU Denver Online. Guys, MSU Denver Online puts a dynamic education at your fingertips without forcing you to decide between earning a degree and living your life. MSU Denver is the Colorado institution providing rigorous and affordable online programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom. We have a couple people at DNVR taking classes over at MSU Denver Online, and they say that there's two awesome things about it that they do that's unique to the college process. One, they bring the real world into the classroom. They teach you what you need to know after you graduate so that you're ready to hit the ground running in those interviews and once you start a job. And the second thing is it's affordable and it's designed for you and designed for a working person or just someone that wants to go full-time online school. They've got that as well. So head to msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer, including over 40 online and hybrid programs and 750 classes. So check them out, msudenver.edu/online. My boy, Mace, what's going on?
Hey, how are you, man? Good to see you. A beautiful Wednesday morning. It's warming up. The snow is melting away in advance of what looks like a beautiful game weekend here in Colorado. Not too bad.
Not too bad, Mace. This is going to be your version of ideal football weather coming up this weekend. We had the snow last week, which I call football weather. We got the 60s and sun this week for this game.
You're insane, by the way, on that one. Yeah, you know what? It's the snow globe is cool to look at when you're on television, but as far as experiencing football, and maybe it's just what you grow up with, but I was telling my wife this over the weekend. The best football weather, it's like what you see in North Carolina or Virginia in you get to November, a crisp 59, 60 degree type of day, a day where you've got to put on your sweater, but you're still comfortable. The sun is out. You've got the last of the leaves falling off the trees. That's football weather. What happened last week, that's skiing weather. That's not football weather.
Well, I mean, you pretty much dialed up what the weather is going to be for Sunday. 59 degrees, little crisp in the air, maybe some leaves still falling, although I think my ski weather just totally ruined that. But Mace, I think this game this weekend is huge, not just for Drew Lock and Justin Herbert and everything that surrounds that, which is so much fun, and we're going to get into the rest of the week. But just 2 days after the Broncos play the Chargers this Sunday is not only Election Day, which make sure to go out and vote, but it's also the trade deadline. And we've seen John Elway make some deals the past couple of years on the trade deadline itself. Trade deadline is Tuesday, November 3rd, also Election Day. Go out and vote again. And Mace, I have a question for you. Are the Broncos buyers or sellers at this trade deadline?
To be determined. And I think it's entirely to be determined by Sunday's game. I mean, if you're 3-4 and staring at games with the Falcons, Raiders, Dolphins right after that, games that you should have a chance to win, then you're standing pat and maybe even buying, although I don't think we'll see quite as many buyers as usual, because one thing that's sort of in play here is in the COVID year, with players having to wait before they can report and have to go through the battery of tests before they can actually suit up, you're losing a week that you would ordinarily have a player.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing, for example, the Everson Griffin trade to the Lions yesterday. And, people are like, the Lions, are they buyers? The Lions, you can scratch your head about this. The Lions are 3-3 and have one pretty impressive win in their back pocket, beating Arizona on the road earlier this year. So you can kind of rationalize why the Lions see themselves as buyers rather than sellers. So that I think may affect the market a little bit, but I don't think you should be selling if you win. I mean, I think it comes down to that. Now, if you lose, all bets are off. And one thing that we talked about is that if you don't have that player in your plans for a year from now or 2 years from now, even, you should consider selling if the offer is right. And I mean, that's where it comes down to. For example, if you're the Broncos and you've decided that you're not re-signing Justin Simmons, then you have to entertain offers. But if you're planning on bringing Justin Simmons back, then you don't trade him. And the other thing, of course, is the offer for a Justin Simmons would have to exceed what you get on the compensatory market if he walks away, which means it would have to be more, that it would have to be at least a third round pick, because you're getting that pick at the end of the third round. All these things are in play, Zach. But I mean, it's a lame answer, but I think it's all about this game. I really do.
I think it's all about this game as well, Mace. But so is there a chance that they are buyers? Because I have a pretty straightforward answer to that.
It would have to be an absolute steal of a buy. It would have to be getting a starter for like a 6th-round pick. Yeah. And what position are we talking? Oh boy. I mean,
defensive line, maybe Mike Purcell out.
That's actually one that pops in mind right now. Nose tackle, maybe sub-package coverage linebacker. Maybe offensive tackle if you're not confident in DeMar Dotson. Wide receiver, I think they'll stand pat. Running back, I think they'll stand pat. Quarterback, that's obvious.
I think if the Broncos are buyers, Mace, there's really only one position that would make sense and that I could see them doing, and that is defensive line, because of how decimated they've been with injuries. Now, they are getting guys like DeMarcus or Draymond Jones and DeMarcus Walker back, but you just lost your big guy, and you don't really have a replacement for him. However, saying that, I don't see the Broncos being buyers. I don't see that happening. I think this game is huge to determine how big of sellers the Broncos are at the trade deadline. If the Broncos win and they're 3-4, I still think there's a chance that they could make a move, Mace. I think if the Broncos win and they're 3-4, they'll be 3-1 in their last 4 games. And so I think it would be difficult to sell at that point. But I think the Broncos will listen to offers, because unless you're a great team, you're listening to offers. And below 500, John Elway knows where this team is at. He would listen to offers. However, if you lose then you make it known that not just a Justin Simmons, not just one or two guys are available, but you make it known that a lot of guys are available. And Mace, I think with this team right now, and you kind of went through the guidelines of who would be available, I think there's a lot of people that would be available on this Broncos team.
Yeah, but one of them, and I know he's been discussed in some spheres, one of them who I don't think would be available is Garrett Bowles.
No, yeah, I don't think so either.
And the reason is if they can't come to an accord on a contract, and certainly Garrett Bowles, if you're Bowles and his agent right now, you're looking at the PFF rankings of tackles, and his name is atop the list, the highest graded tackle in the NFL. And I know that you can debate whether the PFF grades are valid or not from here until Sunday. But when you've got a number like that, that is something that in any contract back and forth, they're going to bring up. And that's the sort of thing that will tell Garrett Bowles and his representation that you can get the Brinks truck backed up to your garage at some point here. Maybe it's going to be from the Broncos. Maybe it's on the market from somebody else. But the fact that the Broncos have the franchise tag and the ability to use it in their back pocket, it's not ideal. In retrospect, they probably erred in not picking up that fifth-year option, but you can't unscramble eggs at this point, right? You've got to just go on with it. It would not surprise me if Garrett Bowles is playing next year on the franchise tag if they can't come to a deal at some point. But the fact that you are talking about Garrett Bowles being in your plans for next year, I would say no matter what happens with contract negotiations, means that he's off the market. He's somebody you're keeping.
Yeah, Mace, I don't think they're trading him as well, but the counterpoint could be, well, what if you're not sold on Garrett Bowles and his value is as high as it's ever going to be right now? Someone could view him as a franchise left tackle. What would be an offer, or is there an offer that you just wouldn't be able to refuse if someone were to come after you for Garrett?
A 1.
First round pick for Garrett Bowles, and you do it?
You'd think long and hard about it because it's a good tackle draft this year, and you'd say, okay, well, we'll just turn around and we'll use that one on another left tackle.
And I think I agree. You're not dumping Garrett Bowles by any means at this trade deadline. But if a team blows you away, and I think being blown away would be a 1, I think you do it. And just like you said, because it's a good tackle draft, you could replace him and probably get a player that you feel even more comfortable with.
But here's the other thing to consider in that. Are you still trying to get a fair valuation on Drew Lock?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Is that evaluation really fair if you take what is the strongest position in your starting lineup right now? Left tackle. I would say Garrett Bowles is the best player on the Broncos offense today at this moment.
Yep.
This season.
Which is wild.
Hey, give him credit because we were doubters. A lot of people doubted him, but
he wasn't. I mean, we were doubters because he wasn't playing well.
Right, exactly.
He turned it around. So props to him.
Yeah, good for him. Everybody has had the same questions about Garrett Bowles, and the Broncos had those questions because they didn't pick up the fifth-year option.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're certainly not saying anything that they weren't thinking inside that building.
No, absolutely not.
But if you trade Garrett Bowles, the problem is who's your left tackle? Is it Elijah Wilkinson when he comes back from injury? Is it Calvin Anderson? Is it? Are you forcing Netani Muti out there? Are you putting Jake Rogers in there? Oh boy! I mean, the possibilities are not stellar here. And I would say this: if you want the rest of the season, it's about Drew Lock, right? It's about evaluating him. Yep. So even if you do get blown away, it's hard to justify trading Garrett Bowles if you want to get a fair look at Drew Lock. I would say this: if they got blown away with an offer and took it, I did say, you could go ahead and pick a tackle next year, but maybe the most likely scenario is it's part of some compensation for a quarterback, because trading Garrett Bowles, if you got that offer, I think would be I think it would be signing a death warrant for the prospects of Drew Lock behind that offensive line right now.
Well, just to counter that, though, Mace, you could make the argument, and the Broncos could convince themselves that it was all Drew Lock making Garrett Bowles better, because it's not like Garrett Bowles got better last year with Joe Flacco and then continued it when Drew Lock got in. He got better when Drew Lock got in, and he's been good even when Drew Lock hasn't been in this year. But the Broncos could convince themselves of that Drew Lock is a good enough quarterback, or at least his abilities work well with tackles and help elevate them. Now, I agree, and I think we can move on from Garrett Bowles because, Mace, I don't think that they're moving on from him. They'd have to be blown away by an offer, and I don't think a team is going to do that. So who are some other players that the Broncos could trade? Because I think that if they lose this game, I think there's a lot that could be out on the market.
Yeah, well, I mean, and these are painful possibilities because these are guys that are helping you out. Mentioned Simmons, of course. You'd have to throw Kareem Jackson in that mix as well.
Yep, exactly. And Justin Simmons has been the one that people have been talking about.
Right.
But there's also another safety and pretty much the exact same boat.
Yeah, and his contract, you get certainly he's got one more year left on this deal. By the way, that contract next year, if you cut Kareem Jackson or don't restructure or otherwise let him go, they'd save $10 million under the cap. So, I mean, this is unfortunately, we're going to have a lot of conversations about guys who are still on this team in the offseason, but debating what to do with their contracts because that cap is probably going to settle around $175 million because of all the lost revenue.
Right.
So, really, you start kind of you go through the contracts and you go through how things shake out. I mean, for example, I don't think they would trade Kareem Jackson. Okay. I don't think they'd trade AJ Boye either, but that's another tradable contract.
It is, and I think that Kareem would be more likely than AJ Boye. I just think AJ could be more in the future plans. But you're right, it is a very tradable contract.
Yeah, I hope that's not. I mean, I hope they're not trading either of them. And AJ Boye, you know, he has played well. He hasn't played much. He's played a game and a half basically. But he has played really well in those games. And looks like watching AJ Boye already, it looks to me like the scheme's a perfect fit for him. And that's what we're talking about. In fact, I would actually say this. Because you've got the secondary finally at its intended design with the top four guys and Michael Ojemudia balling out as the number 3 cornerback. Because you have that in play, I mean, this defense has the opportunity to be really, really stinking good in the second half of the season, even without Mike Purcell at nose tackle, even with all that you've lost injury-wise. And this is why, unless you get absolutely bombed on Sunday, like if the secondary in its full form, fully healthy, if the secondary is being beaten over the top during that game, then you think about selling. But if you lose to the Chargers, but you lose, say, 20-17, and your secondary has confused Justin Herbert and given him his first bad day as a pro. Frankly, I'm hesitant to trade anybody back there because that part of the team is the reason why you might get back into this.
So then, are you signing Justin Simmons? Are you making sure that Justin Simmons is a Bronco for the future? Are you maybe extending Kareem Jackson to make sure that the secondary is here for a while? Because we talk about the trade deadline and you're not trading guys that are in your long-term future. That's why we're not going to talk about Bradley Chubb. We're not going to talk about Jerry Jeudy, any of the young guys, because they are certainly in the Broncos' future plans. But, you know, Justin Simmons is done after this year. Kareem Jackson has one more year. Are you signing those guys?
Well, Justin Simmons, definitely. Kareem Jackson, he's got another year left on his deal. I think you're letting that play out, and you're seeing how he is after what would be his 12th season.
Yeah.
In 2021. And then you're making that call. You don't have to make that call today. The call on Justin Simmons is coming a lot sooner. But there are going to be other things in play. I mean, our earlier discussion this week about the quarterbacks. And if Drew Lock isn't the guy and their choice is to go get a veteran and try to microwave things and fix them right now, well, unfortunately, if you do that, if you go for the microwave there at quarterback, Who's the most likely microwave that you think this team might get?
Matt Ryan?
Yeah, Matt Ryan or Matthew Stafford, right?
And just with with the Lions 3-3 and
Right.
buying, I don't know if they're willing to move on. But yeah, those would be the two.
I think the only way the Lions move on is if there's a regime change.
Yeah.
And remember, I mean, they're 3-3 right now. They were either 500 or I think within a half game of it because they had that tie last year before Matthew Stafford got hurt.
Yep.
So in Detroit, they're thinking with Matthew Stafford, we are in this.
Yep.
So if they're competitive and they play well down the stretch, they're not trading Matthew Stafford.
Right.
They're gonna ride with him. I think his name comes up because it's occasionally floated around, and if the Lions do fade down in the back half of the season here, then yeah, I think somebody is gonna be on the market. But the point being, if you are talking about a Stafford or a Ryan, you're talking about a cap number that is going to be north of $22 million for the quarterback position, which means that's blowing up your plan. Part of your plan for the next couple of years was being able to have Drew Lock on that.
Right.
Get your glasses ready, folks. Cost-controlled quarterback contract.
Yep.
And so you're going from paying a quarterback $1.5 million to paying him $24 million potentially. So where is that 23 or that $22.5 million coming from? It's probably coming from, I hate to say it because I really like Justin Simmons. It's probably coming from letting him go or making other moves.
Yep, exactly. And the Broncos are going to be in a cap situation just like every other team, regardless of if they get a quarterback or not. And Mace, one of the guys that the Broncos won't be bringing in right now and trading for is a defensive lineman, Carlos Dunlap, who was just traded from the Bengals to Seattle. So cross him off your wish list, Broncos. Yeah. He's not coming here. So
the greatest trade request in the history of the NFL, by the way. Describing your home on Twitter as being available.
Yep, that is pretty darn good. And so, Mace, what would you trade for, or what would you trade Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson for if deals were offered?
My floor on Justin Simmons would be a third-round pick. Again, It's more than you would get in the compensatory range because that third comes at the end of the third round. And
and I think that would be a realistic trade to happen. Maybe you get a late second round pick, but I think that's kind of the realistic ballpark. And what about Kareem?
You'd probably be willing to take a little bit less because he's a veteran, but I would almost say this, even though you are thinking what's above that compensatory haul for Justin Simmons, I would say a third for Kareem Jackson and a second for Justin Simmons in order to make that deal.
Yeah, and those would be trades that I think you have to do if you lose this game on Sunday. Those are ones that you just can't pass up. So I agree with you there. Now, moving on to someone else, another guy that I think could be a candidate to be traded would be Shelby Harris. Of course, he right now is not in the Broncos' long-term plans. He could be because he's young enough where they can give him another deal, keep him around. You're probably going to have to pay him some money there, but right now he's not in their Broncos plans.
Yeah, and trading Shelby, given all that you've lost on the defensive line so far this year, you did just get Draymond Jones back, but you've lost Mike Purcell, you've lost Jarrell Casey. Trading Shelby Harris, that's a white flag on the season.
Yep, I agree.
You are at that point. You are just kind of going to try to hang on, and maybe McTelvin Agim has to play a lot more. But you're trying to hang on with a lot of guys that you've brought in. I think that even though we saw his frustration bubble over on the sideline, I don't think trading Shelby Harris would go over very well in a lot of quarters in that locker room.
Yeah,
and that's a potential lose the team kind of trade. I would say even Justin Simmons, Kareem Jackson as well. But so is Shelby Harris. He's balling out. I can't blame him for being frustrated at you know what? I like seeing the fire. I mean, it was a dumb penalty there at the end of the game, and it gave the Chiefs another touchdown. And he shouldn't have been getting into it with Vic Fangio. But you know what? I like seeing the fire. It's sort of like the scene in Major League when Wild Thing Vaughn thinks he's going to be cut because Roger Doran puts the fake red tag in his locker in the clubhouse, and he goes into Lou Brown's office and he overturns the chair now and vows his revenge in a very expletive-filled manner. I like, you know what? I like seeing the pattern, and Lou Brown's like, good. I like that kind of attitude in the player. You know what? I like the fire that Shelby Harris had. I like the fact that he is not taking this sitting down. That he's got the kicking and screaming in him right now.
Yeah, I totally agree, Mace. But one thing you can't do, you can't get those penalties. Even though that's good, I don't agree with the penalty at all. And we found out from Noah Fant yesterday that there were definitely words said from the defense to the offense in the locker room after that game, and that is needed.
Yeah, it's needed. Noah empathized. Noah understood why those words were being said. He didn't appear to have a problem with it at all.
Exactly. So Mace, you would be very hesitant to trade Shelby. Let's say you lose on Sunday. What is the deal that you would trade him, or is there a deal that you would trade him?
Well, if it's my team, I'm re-signing him.
Okay,
but I really like Shelby.
There's no deal that would make you trade.
It would have to be. It would have. I think the minimum that would get a conversation going is a 3rd round pick.
Okay,
for me,
I could see that happening. I could see a team trading a 3rd round pick, a late 3rd round pick, in order to sign Shelby Harris for a couple of years.
Yeah, but let's just. I think let's just say this: we're tossing these possibilities out there. I don't think we're going to see any of them come to fruition.
Okay, well, we were going to get to that at the end, see if any of these would come true. But I'm just going through the guys who I think could be candidates, and I think we've identified 3 guys that are legitimate candidates right now. And then on the offensive side, Mitch, do you have any other defensive players? Because I think that's it for me, really.
No, I mean, you're hoping to get Alexander Johnson and get him back long term.
Yeah.
In the next couple of years, get him to a deal. Josie Jewell's playing well in the role he's being asked to play. Malik Reed is providing great value. Bradley Chubb is a foundational player. I think literally the only way you're talking about trading Bradley Chubb is if Drew Lock isn't the answer, and you're trying to put together a package to move up and get a Trevor Lawrence.
And you're not doing that this trade deadline.
No.
That's after this season.
That discussion doesn't happen until January or February.
So then on the offensive side of the ball, I think there's one guy that, would be a possible candidate, and I think that's Melvin Gordon, because Broncos move on from him, admit it did not work out. Now, the tricky thing with it is, how long is Phillip Lindsay out? There's a chance he could play this weekend. There's a chance he could miss a month. It's so tough with the concussion protocol, and we probably won't get any ideas for a couple of days on exactly where Phil's at there. So that would also be really tough for the Broncos this season. But then you have fans that would say, no, it's addition by subtraction there.
Well, who's taking a guy who's facing a suspension?
Yeah, his value would not be good.
And that's something to consider. That's why I think even if they wanted to trade Melvin Gordon, I don't think it's going to happen, because once it goes through the courts and once there is a plea or a conviction for this, he's looking at a 3-game suspension. And so if you trade for him, you wouldn't have him for the following week because of COVID protocols. You might be losing him for 3 games down the stretch, based on the rate at which this thing goes through the courts. Yeah, I can't see Melvin Gordon being traded. I don't think the market's going to be there at all.
If you did, it would just be to dump him. It wouldn't be to get a 3rd or a 2nd or a 4th round pick back. It would be something very late for a team that maybe has one good running back, but has injury concerns. And so they want some guy to supplement him like that. But Mace, on the offensive side of the ball, that's really the only guy that I can think of that they would trade. Is there anyone else that jumps out to you?
No, I mean, you want to stay the course with Dalton Reisner, see where he goes. Lloyd Cushenberry, he's a rookie. He's played better the last couple of games. That's the thing. You've got a lot of you got first contract guys like Cushenberry and Reisner who have a couple more years left. We already talked about Garrett Bowles and why that's not something that you'd necessarily do. I think someone like on the outside, Jerry Jeudy's a rookie. Tim Patrick is playing well, and maybe you're looking to re-sign him down the line. Certainly, you're going to give him, I think, the second round tender when it comes to the RFA situation this offseason. I mean, maybe Nick Vannett, but I don't know whether the value would be there. And I'm reluctant to trade my best blocking tight end. And also, looking at the passing game in general, Zach, when Vic Fangio talks about kind of fixing everything, that's on all the players, it's on all the coaches as well. I would not be surprised if we see even more two tight end sets than we have seen in recent weeks, and see Nick Vannett staying home to block more often. And maybe we see some 3 tight end sets where Vannett stays home and you've got Okwebunam and Noah Fant out there running routes. So I don't think they're trading from the tight end position. So and they're not trading Drew Lock. They're not going to trade anyone from the quarterback position, and they better not trade Philip Lindsay. So.
Yeah, they won't be doing any of that as well. Yeah. A name that is coming up in the comment section is Royce Freeman. To me, he doesn't have any value. You would not be getting anything back, and I don't think a team would really be going crazy to get him. I mean, he's a 3rd running back right now.
And he doesn't have value. He actually has more value to you.
Yeah.
Because Phil is in the concussion protocol, and Melvin Gordon is facing a suspension at some point.
Yep, exactly.
So you need him.
So Mace, you kind of already said it earlier, but do you think any of this happens before Tuesday?
No, I don't think so.
Now, if something were to happen, what's the most likely one in your mind?
The most likely would be probably 1 and 1A, Simmons and Shelby.
Simmons and Shelby. Okay. Yeah. And I think it would be Simmons and Kareem. Just because when you trade one of those guys, you still have the other, and maybe then you try to make the other one long-term. Well, if it's Kareem that you're trading, then you really try to prioritize Justin. That's how you can justify paying Justin a big contract, is by saying, okay, now we only have 1 high-paid safety. I agree with you, Mace. I don't think we see a trade happen. When DT was traded, it was for a 4th-round pick. So not a huge trade. When you traded Emmanuel, you got a 3rd and a 4th back. Good trade there. I just don't see getting enough value for a trade to happen this year. But it's going to be interesting if they lose this week. That is for sure. That will be the comment, or that will be what we're talking about for 48 hours.
Well, we'll be talking about that, but we're also going to be talking about where Drew Lock stands compared with Justin Herbert. So,
I mean, we're going to be talking about a lot. Yes, of course.
There's going to be a lot to consider in the 48 hours and beyond based on this game. But, who knows? Maybe Drew Lock is going to reannounce his presence with authority, and the Broncos are going to win and be 3-4, and it's going to be all smiles and sunshine and saying, yeah, we're going down to Atlanta, and we got a chance, although Atlanta is better than its record. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and the Falcons could only be half a game behind you by the time you play them, depending on how things work out. Mace, before we end this first segment in this live pod, I got to get your DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. But before we do that, I got to get to a comment left earlier by Steven Hernandez. Of course, he said he gave Mace a comp, what he thought he looked like earlier in the week. Steven Hernandez now says that he thought I looked like actor DJ Qualls just from hearing my voice before seeing me. Mace, do you know who that is?
DJ Qualls.
I don't. I've never seen him before. Very curious.
Have you ever seen Road Trip?
No, I actually have not. No.
Okay. I mean, I don't want to have a negative description here, but he's tall. He's very slender. In that film, he's kind of geeky looking a little bit.
Okay.
Yes.
Here we go.
And here's some more recent pictures of DJ Qualls.
Okay.
The thing is, I'm like, when I saw that name, I'm like, the only thing I could think of him in was, it shows kind of how out of it I guess I am. The only thing I could think of him in was Road Trip.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Steven. Thanks for that one. Hey, yeah. Now you got it. You got to get RK. I know you said you're brewing on RK as well. So maybe on Friday's live pod, we'll get an RK description there. But Mace, DraftKings Sportsbook pick of the week. What are you going with this week?
Why don't you start us off? Because I'm currently looking for the lines right now. I was actually, you know what? Before this, I was going to give you a pick on Wisconsin against Nebraska, but there will be no Wisconsin-Nebraska game this weekend because of a COVID outbreak that includes reportedly their quarterback position. And according to, I think it was Bruce Feldman who was reporting this on Twitter, Paul Chryst, their coach, has a COVID outbreak. So you give me a pick, and I'm looking for it right now. For some reason, the lines aren't showing up for me on my screen.
Well, I'm going to go back to I'm going to go back to what cashed for me the past 2 weeks, and that is, of course, the Alabama Crimson Tide, who all they do is win. And that's all they do against the spread as well. Of course, 2 weeks ago, I gave you the over in the Georgia-Alabama game. That hit easily. And last week, I gave you Alabama to cover the 21.5-point spread against Tennessee. That one easily. So I'm going back to Alabama again. They're 31.5-point favorites over Mississippi State this weekend, and you can't put enough points on this game. Give me Alabama. Give me the over 4 touchdown and 1 field goal spread that they have. And it's going to cash again, guys, I think, because Alabama is averaging 50 points per game, which is absolutely insane. And they played the number 3 team in the country in Georgia and still are able to average 50 points. Last week or 2 weeks ago, Mississippi State scored 2 points against a worse team than Alabama. This is going to be a huge blowout. In the past 3 games, Mississippi State has scored 14 points, 2 points, and 14 points, and they're going up against Alabama, who's averaging 50. So it is not going to be close. Alabama 31.5.
Okay. I thought about just now putting a pick on Jets Chiefs because with such a colossal line, I believe it's 19.5 right now.
Yep.
With that's something everyone's talking about. It's rare to see a spread that great. But I'm sorry, I got to go back to my well. I've got to look at the Green Bay Packers at home against the Minnesota Vikings on Sunday. Packers are 6.5-point favorites. The Vikings are terrible. The Packers appear to have put one bad game against Tampa Bay in their rearview mirror, killed a flea with a sledgehammer down in Houston, taking out the all navy blue clad Texans. I think they're going to stomp the purple like grapes on Sunday in northeastern Wisconsin. Give me the Packers, even though they're giving 6.5 to the Vikings.
Yeah, I like that one too, Mace. I think that one's going to cash for sure. And something that's for sure going to cash is the comment section, which is coming up next for all of those people listening to the podcast. We'll jump into the comments in just a second. For all of you joining us on the live, make sure to go check out the podcast version of this, where we will continue to talk about Broncos football today. And thank you guys so much for joining us on this live podcast. If you missed any of this podcast, well, check out the podcast of it or go back and re-watch. So thank you guys so much for joining with us, and let's jump into the comment section, Mace.